Soon after their whirlwind marriage, Peter Sellers whisked Britt Ekland to Hollywood. But before she could get used to this new glamorous lifestyle, she found a strange letter her new husband had written. When she read it, she realised she'd made a horrible mistake. Britt Ekland was one of the most legendary frosty blondes of the 1970s. She had it all: the looks, the talent, and the charm. She was once destined for superstardom, but love derailed her journey every step of the way. Before becoming an icon in her own right, she got a taste of the high life from her father, Sven Ekland, a celebrated Swedish curler. Thanks to her dad, Ekland enjoyed life as a Swedish socialite, but her fame would soon overtake her father's, catapulting her to international notoriety. Apparently, even Bond girls have awkward teenage years. Ekland doesn't look back too fondly on her youth, saying she struggled with her body image. But she made sure to play to her strengths, leaning into her comedic side and always trying to make people laugh. Something that helped Ekland's early success was her striking resemblance to another blonde bombshell, Brigitte Bardot. After she shed her ugly duckling feathers as a teen, her words, not mine, Ekland even found work as a teenage Bardot lookalike. Her work led her to join a travelling theatre company in her adolescence. During her time working in Italy, a talent agent from 20th Century Fox spotted her on the Piazza Venezia, delicately sipping a cappuccino. Ekland's icy good looks and talent for comedy made her a point of focus for the talent executives at Fox. The studio wanted to give her the platform to become their next big star, following in the footsteps of icons like Jane Mansfield and Marilyn Monroe. The proof was in the pudding. The movie-going people loved a bubbly blonde, and Ekland was set to be their next big hit. It was a dream come true, until her path to stardom took a major detour. When English funny man Peter Sellers saw a photograph of her in a newspaper, it was love, or something like it, at first sight. Both Ekland and Sellers were staying at the Dorchester Hotel in London, where he sent his valet to fetch the Swedish actress. It seemed that news of Sellers' comedic genius was unknown to Ekland. She was only familiar with him from his amorous exploits in the gossip rags. Upon learning that she was unfamiliar with his work, Sellers took Ekland out on their first date, a trip to the movies to check out his performance as Inspector Clouseau in The Pink Panther. But this was only the first of his ego-driven gestures. Following their first meeting, Sellers bought the entire flower shop in the Dorchester and had it installed in Ekland's suite. He also gifted her a dachshund puppy named Pepper, who clearly had no inkling of the roller coaster his new parents were about to take him on. Ekland was madly head over heels in love with Sellers, and they tied the knot 10 days after they met. After their nuptials, Ekland flew to Los Angeles to begin work on Guns at Battersea, a 1964 British film based on a novel of the same name. And that's when her new husband pulled a chilling move. Exhausted by Sellers' constant surveillance of her, Ekland gave in and joined him at his Los Angeles home for Easter weekend. But he had a surprise in store for her. Sellers had a doctor waiting to examine her because she didn't look well. But though his intentions seemed noble, they were anything but. The doctor told Ekland that she couldn't possibly go back to filming as she was suffering from severe strain and stress, despite being 21 years old and at the height of her health. She realised that there was no saying no to Sellers, nor his entourage of sycophants. The production team of Guns at Battersea was not so forgiving. Ekland was swiftly fired from the film after production learned of her supposed illness. So concluded Ekland's short-lived 20th Century Fox contract. The breach of contract also meant that she would not work in movies for over a year. It seemed her foray into Hollywood would mean she would have Sellers glued to her side. Ekland and Sellers even shared the same agent, and Sellers took complete advantage of this inside track in the worst way. He convinced the agent to turn down roles on her behalf, instead installing his young bride as his co-star in several of his films. This creative relationship was far from fruitful. Each film that Sellers and Ekland made together was a commercial flop, putting a larger strain on their already fraying marriage. Sellers would constantly threaten Ekland with divorce, only to pull back at the last second and act as if nothing had happened. Ekland, in a sheer state of confusion, couldn't immediately see the awful situation for what it was. She later said, "I realised it wasn't right, someone putting me through emotional and psychological warfare." Another confusing aspect of Ekland's life was her reputation as a pin-up. Having grown up in austere, conservative Stockholm under strict parents, the perception that Swedish women were sexually free totally baffled her. This coyness only added to her appeal. It didn't take much to raise Sellers' blood pressure. In fact, it took shockingly little. Ekland could do something as simple as speak to her mother in Swedish, and it would incite an argument that would last for hours. Once, Ekland gave paparazzi permission to snap a photo of the married couple at the Excelsior Hotel in Rome. It snapped something else in Sellers. He berated her all night long, resulting in noise complaints from the other guests. When Sellers demanded that their agent remove Ekland from his site, she hid in another hotel until she could hop on a flight to Sweden. Despite Sellers pleading to reconcile, Ekland was positive of one thing: their disastrous marriage had finally reached its conclusion. During divorce proceedings, things naturally got ugly. One of the main points of argument was the welfare of their daughter, Victoria. Sellers would stress the importance of having custody of Victoria, but when she would come to visit, he would simply hire nannies to watch her. In 1968, the High Court granted Ekland a divorce from Sellers. In the grand scheme of marriages, 4 years seems like a short amount of time, but Ekland stressed that only someone mentally super strong could have tolerated Sellers' treatment throughout that hellish period. However, there was a silver lining. Ekland's bougie upbringing made her a perfect contender for hanging around with Sellers' royal admirers. Instead of spending her weekends partying, she was dining out with Princess Margaret or on hunting expeditions with the Queen. Her previous life as a Swedish socialite made her feel totally at ease in the British upper crust. So at ease that she even romanced one of them. Ekland's re-emergence onto the dating scene was different to your average fresh divorcee. One of her first forays into new romance was with Lord Lichfield, the Queen's cousin. However, this wasn't enough to hold Ekland's interest. She dumped him for being a bit dull. Clearly, her previous romance had upped her expectations for romantic excitement. Finished with British royalty for the time being, Ekland set her sights on someone a little more trendy. The notorious Warren Beatty was Hollywood's lover boy du jour, and even Ekland couldn't resist getting in on the action. She wrote in her memoir, "He could handle women as smoothly as operating an elevator." Damn. But it comes as no surprise, given Beatty's reputation, that their relationship wasn't entirely above board. During their little tryst, he was publicly dating actress Julie Christie. They couldn't appear in public for fear that Christie would find out, so Ekland and Beatty rendezvoused at adult cinemas. She couldn't understand why Beatty would want to watch other people, on screen. To me, that's just bizarre. What kind of pleasure do you get out of it? Well, Beatty didn't last long on her roster. Ekland quickly got what modern linguists would refer to as the ick and moved on. William Friedkin, the directorial mastermind behind The Exorcist, cast Ekland in his 1968 movie musical The Night They Raided Minsky's. Filming took place during Ekland's divorce proceedings from Sellers and was reportedly a driving force behind their split. Sellers was incensed by the risque scenes Ekland performed in the film, and this added fuel to the fire of their divorce. But in a way, it was the best kind of revenge. Minsky's premiered 4 days after Ekland finalised her divorce, and her performance in the film won her the critical acclaim she always dreamed of. Finally living as a free, successful woman, the world became her oyster. She completely embraced her status as a groovy 70s pin-up, taking full advantage of the new audience awarded to her by her breakout role in Minsky's. Ekland starred alongside Michael Caine in the iconic film Get Carter, and the role fully established her as one of the era's foremost blonde bombshells. Her turn as Mary Goodnight in 1974's The Man with the Golden Gun was as iconic as it was thankless. Often slated as one of James Bond's more incapable companions, Ekland's performance mostly served to further her status as a 70s looker. A fateful LA party studded with rock royalty brought Ekland and Rod Stewart together. Stewart passed up the opportunity to jam with Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan and Paul McCartney to instead sit and canoodle with Ekland. The energy between the two was palpable from the start, and they became completely inseparable. But these two lovebirds came from completely different worlds. Ekland came from a high-class pedigree, and Stewart was a working-class builder's son. She enriched his life with vintage clothes, art, and lessons in sophistication. Stewart, on the other hand, was extremely pragmatic in his relationship with Ekland. He rarely bought her gifts, and even insisted she pay her share of the rent and phone bill. This was hardly the star treatment she'd received in her marriage to Sellers, but she was madly in love all the same. And when it comes to love, some things never change. One of the major downfalls of Ekland's 4-year marriage to Sellers was that it caused her to neglect her film career right when it was due to begin. Her relationship with Stewart came with a similar price, but this time Ekland was turning down opportunities right when her stardom was at its peak. Once again, Ekland found herself sacrificing her professional success for a man, leaving her home in London to join Stewart in Los Angeles. The love affair came to a bitter end after 2 years, with no sweet reminiscing on Ekland's part. If you think the dating pool is small now, you can't imagine what it was like to navigate the 1970s as Britt Ekland. During her days as a girl about town, she had a fling with actor George Hamilton, whose ex-wife Alana ended up marrying her ex Rod Stewart. But even if the scene was smaller, she was an admitted wild child in the 70s. She knew she could have anybody she wanted, but it wasn't because she was a promiscuous person. She wanted to flex her power as one of the zeitgeist's dream girls and flirt until she could flirt no more. She enjoyed the art of the chase more than she did the main event. Ekland became a mother for the 3rd time in 1988, welcoming her son Thomas Jefferson to the world. Slim Jim Phantom, drummer of the band Stray Cats, became her 3rd baby daddy. She credits motherhood with keeping her life on track, having had a child in her 20s, 30s and 40s. But after child number 3, the actress knew she wanted a major life change. Given her complicated relationship with her exes, she decided that she didn't want to introduce another man into her children's lives following her divorce from Slim Jim Phantom. But that didn't mean she was through with making a few more mistakes. When you look like Britt Ekland, it stands to reason that you want to stay looking like Britt Ekland for as long as humanly possible, which is why she's long been a fan of cosmetic refinement. She's had to endure ridicule on social media thanks to a botched lip-plumping procedure, plus the painful corrective surgeries that haven't quite worked. Ekland is the first to admit to her vanity, and that her beauty is the key to her success. The 2004 film The Life and Death of Peter Sellers, in which Ekland is played by Charlize Theron, gave her a chance to reflect on the ups and downs of her tumultuous relationship with the comedian. And if there was one moment that convinced her that her marriage to Sellers was a mistake, it came soon after she moved to Hollywood, when she received a rambling 3-page letter from Sellers that exposed his paranoia about her cheating with her Battassi co-star John Layton. He even recruited the help of old friends and fellow Battassi cast members David Lodge and Graham Stark to spy on Ekland on set. Oh dear. Before there was Mia Goth, Sarah Michelle Gellar, or even Jamie Lee Curtis, there was Britt Ekland. During her reign of the 70s, she made her mark on the horror genre by starring in several movies. In 1972 alone, she starred in What the Peepers Saw, Endless Night, and Asylum. Moreover, the most famous film of Ekland's horror oeuvre is a favourite among fans of the genre, but filming was rife with controversy. In 1973, Ekland portrayed the wanton Willow McGregor in The Wicker Man, widely considered the Citizen Kane of horror movies. Despite the critical lauding of the film, the production was far from a pleasant walk along the Scottish coastline. Ekland herself has refused to speak about the film for years, saying that it was every man for himself. One of Ekland's gripes with the filming was quite intimate. Her role as the saucy innkeeper's daughter required her to perform a stripped-down dance number. She insisted that she would only appear naked from the waist up, as she'd just discovered she was 3 months pregnant with her son Nick and felt self-conscious. But production needed that bottom shot, so they came up with a crafty solution. Producers hired the help of an exotic dancer from Glasgow who happily provided them with the missing element of their scene. This was no shade toward Ekland's sensual appeal, as The Wicker Man set her up to take on one of the most enviable roles of her career, cementing her place in the pop culture canon.